Welcome back, everybody. It's time for Ask the Expert. If you have questions about today's subject matter, free advice is coming your way with Ottawa Physiotherapy. 613-789-6559, extension 2803 is the number to call. You can email questions, ottawa.morning@ctv.ca. Facebook is questions. Whatever way you can get them to you, we'll try and answer those questions. Matthew Pulikal is here from Ottawa Physiotherapy and Sports Clinics. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good, thank you. You brought a shoulder.
Yes, I did.
A shoulder to cry on. That is a model of an actual shoulder.
Yes, it is.
Is that kind of life size then?
I guess. Ish.
Yeah. Show me the parts of the shoulder. What should I know about it?
All right, so when people come to me with shoulder problems, everyone's always focused on this joint here, which is essentially right in the front, okay? But the shoulder is a little bit more complex. You got a joint here, you got a joint here, you got a joint here, and then you've got the shoulder blade, that's another joint,
right?
Okay, and then you've got your upper back. And
so
all
it's a
joints,
hub of activity.
Yeah, so it's called the shoulder complex, technically.
Right.
So then when a person comes in and they say they have shoulder pain, as a physio, we need to figure out what joint or joints are at fault, and then what muscle or muscles are at fault, etc. So it's a little bit of a system. You
must encounter a lot of people who come in with shoulder issues.
Shoulders. Yeah, actually, shoulders we're going to get a lot of them. There's in the summer you got gardening, you got golfing, you got swimming. You've got people who work at the desk 24/7, so they're going to start slouching forward.
Right.
Home renos, working out, and if you really think about it, how can you not move your arm if you're using your shoulder?
Right.
So therefore, there's a lot of overuse, there's a lot of injuries, and we end up seeing them.
Right. Common injuries.
Common injuries, a lot of it is tendonitis.
Yeah.
Or bursitis. So itis basically means inflammation. So there's some type of inflammation occurring on some type of tissue as a function of overuse usually. And we need to figure out what joint is causing the problem, and then you sort of work your way backwards and deal with it.
Is it pretty easy to figure out which joint is an issue and which is not, or can that get complicated?
It can get complicated. I think it depends on whether or not, there's a scenario where, Kurt, I just take you and I punch in the shoulder, you have a bruise, okay, we know what happened there, right? If you're working at the desk and you've been doing that for 20 years and you come in with a problem, then the odds are it's not just one trauma, there's a whole bunch of things occurring there.
And it could be other things along with your shoulder, your back, what have you, that are causing you some problems.
Right.
Now, I mentioned to you earlier, I had surgery as an 18-year-old man, and I'm sure it's a lot different today than it was back then.
Yes.
But what happened in my case was I stretched some muscles, I guess, here that hold your shoulder in place. Right, and you can actually show me that on that model.
So in your case, you had a biceps tendon which goes in this groove here, and what happened was it was started sliding out. So they cut a piece of this bone and they put it here to block the biceps tendon from sliding around.
Oh yeah.
It's called a putty plot, and they actually no longer do that surgery anymore.
No.
But it was pretty popular, I think, in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I tell you, the guy who actually did the surgery was the same guy that operated on Bobby Orr's knees the first time. So there you go. That tells you something. Yeah. Wasn't yesterday. But is that a common injury to have? It's a hockey injury?
Yes, hockey in particular, because you're flying into the boards, you're using the stick a lot, you're fighting, depending on the scenario is. So obviously you're going to use your shoulder, and you're going to be asking for some problems depending on the scenario. Right.
What kind of treatment are we talking about? Obviously it depends on the injury itself.
Right.
But are we looking at particular treatments for particular ailments in this case?
In general, you got to look at it this way. Every joint has the joint itself.
Right.
Okay. So there's whatever it's inside the joint. There's the capsule, which is the joint, and there's all the muscles and whatever outside. So there's a combination of any one of those three will dictate whatever is injured, and that pretty much tells you what you have to fix.
Right.
So if it's the shoulder, then we have to stretch the joint if it's tight. If it's muscles that are weak or too tight, you strengthen the weak guys, stretch the tight guys, teach you how to move the shoulder properly, and then things get better.
I think one of the things about shoulder joints in particular is, and I know all joints are relatively similar in this instance, but they can be quite painful because it's something you're always using, right? So if you sustain some sort of injury or joint issue, if you don't have it looked at and taken care of, it can cause you pain for quite a long time.
Yes. Again, if I just use this little anatomy model here, there's a certain space here, okay? That space has to be there. Now, depending on how your arm sits, you're going to have less space. Therefore, you're going to pinch some things in time. Once you pinch it, it swells. Once you swell, you've got pain.
Right.
And like you said, it can be really painful.
Yeah, exactly. And it can intensify over time if you don't
Well,
look
basically,
after it.
yeah, the more you irritate it, the more it swells,
Right.
the more it gets pinched, and it just keeps on going and going and going.
I often wonder, like, when it comes to posture, does that have a lot to do with how your shoulders react to situations? And if you have good posture, are you less apt to get a shoulder injury, let's say?
Yes, yes, absolutely. We're going to cover that eventually, but the biggest problem with shoulder injuries in many cases is because of poor posture. So even though as a physio or as a client you're coming in with a pain in your shoulder, we actually have to address everything that's around that, hence that complex I was referring to get you to keep the joint in the right position versus here. Okay,
because that's a common problem, right?
Exactly, very common problem.
You brought this model, but you brought a live model as well, and
yes.
we'll use him in the next segment and show some things about posture and things associated with the shoulder. If you have questions, great opportunity for you to ask them, get some free information. 613-789-6559, extension 2803. You can email us questions, Facebook us questions. We're with Ottawa Physiotherapy and Sports Clinics. We'll be back with more of Ask the Expert right after this.